Okay, let's get started. Today, we will be discussing oily skin and acne, and we will provide insights into the models and assays available for research and testing on these topics. The webinar is intended to last between 45 to 50 minutes and will be followed by a Q&A session. So we'll continue with our webinar. We'll first begin with a brief introduction to acne, and then we'll see how oily skin is related to it. In general, when we talk about acne, we are specifically referring to acne vulgaris. There are other types of acne, but they won't be our focus today. Acne is defined as a chronic inflammatory condition that originates in the pilosebaceous unit, which we'll see in few sites, and that results in acne lesions. Acne is frequently perceived as a natural part of the life cycle, but fortunately, the scientific consensus is beginning to shift, and that's why I want to emphasize the fact that this is indeed a skin condition. So acne is universal, or almost so. Approximately 640 million people worldwide are affected, which is around 1/10 of the world's population, which is a lot. Different reports indicate that acne is among the 3 most common skin conditions, and that is the #1 cause of dermatologist consultation. But although it is universal, acne does not affect everyone in the same way. You might have noticed acne is primarily observed in teenagers and young adults, making it the most common skin condition in adolescents. However, it is important to keep in mind that it also affects many adults. Indeed, between 20 to 40% of cases persist beyond the age of 25. Acne affects both men and women, and it also affects people of all ethnicities, but the type of acne and clinical consequences may show slight variations. And logically, these differences can be partially explained by genetic factors, which at the end of the day make each one of us very unique. Here you can see a typical curve representing the most common course of acne, reflecting what we have just mentioned. On the y-axis, we have a parameter known as YLDs. In this case, it is proportional to the time spent living with acne. On the x-axis, we have different age groups. And what we see is a gradual development of clinically apparent disease from childhood until the beginning of puberty, lasting for months, up to a year. Then, during puberty, we usually experience a continuous phase with occasional flares. Finally, during adulthood, from the 3rd decade onwards, there is a slow regression. Many of you may already know this, but the peak observed during puberty and adolescence is closely linked to hormonal factors that act as a trigger. What about acne lesions? They can be categorized into non-inflammatory and inflammatory types. Among the non-inflammatory ones are closed and open comedones, commonly known as whiteheads and blackheads respectively. In the inflammatory category, we have papules, cysts, nodules, and pustules. Later on, we'll discuss a bit more about how these lesions develop and what is happening at the tissue level. Also important to note, all inflammatory lesions develop from initial non-inflammatory lesions. That's why it is important to prevent the appearance of whiteheads and blackheads in the first place. As if having inflammatory lesions was not uncomfortable enough already, unfortunately, there's a risk that following the inflammatory episodes, the patient may develop post-inflammatory lesions. We can mention at least 3 significant ones: scarring, hyperpigmentation, and erythema. We have seen that there are various types of acne and post-inflammatory lesions, and that they won't all be present in every individual. Thus, based on the clinical presentation of acne, the condition can be classified into different forms. The issue is that there is a lack of consensus on the grading criteria. So various classification systems exist, which makes it challenging to compare the efficacy of certain treatments carried out in independent studies that use different systems. Here is an example of one classification system, the Global Acne Evolution, the GAE. It categorizes acne into 5 grades, considering the number and type of lesions. You have grade 1, grade 2, known as mild, grade 3, moderate, grade 4, severe, and grade 5, very severe. So how have we, as actors in the pharma and dermocosmetic industries, contributed to acne treatment and continue to do so?